until Saturn.
Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday. It's a lively day here at the Ricky Williams show where we're talking about culture and astrology. It used to be race astrology, although today we're going to revisit race because we have a very interesting episode with Danielle here, Danielle DRD. Um, and we're going to be talking about the question of, is race an identity? Or is it something that you basically have genetically or ethnically? Because we're going to look at the case of Rachel Dolezal. Okay, so I'm going to actually start by sharing my screen, and we're going to look a little bit at Rachel. Have you heard of Rachel, Ricky?
I have, yeah.
Okay, what have you heard about her?
That she identifies as African American and she was born into a family that wasn't African American.
Okay, so this is Rachel. Um, I'm just looking at her Wikipedia. I guess she changed her name to Nkechi Amere Diallo. Okay. So, she is an American former college instructor. So we know what she taught in college?
I'm guessing something about race.
It was like African American studies or something. She presents herself as a black woman despite being born to white parents. She's also a former National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter president. So, first of all, let's ask that question. Can somebody be a president of the NAACP if they are white? What do you guys think?
Well, the history of the organization is that they were actually started by mainly Jews and African Americans. So, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can because it was started. It wasn't only started by African Americans. It was actually started with the help, mainly the help of Jewish Americans.
Interesting. So it's not a requirement to be African American in order to be involved with the NAACP. You can be an ally of the cause, basically. Okay, well, I guess she's not making an error there then. I mean, that's not her error. I mean, maybe she's perfect. Okay, Dolezal was president of the NAACP chapter in Spokane until June 2015 when she resigned in the midst of a controversy over her racial identity. She was the subject of public scrutiny when her parents publicly stated that she was pretending to be black but was actually white. The statement by Dolezal's parents followed Dolezal's reports to police and local news media that she had been the victim of race-related hate crimes. She also had claimed on an application form to be mixed race and had falsely claimed that an African American man was her father and that her brother was her son. In the aftermath of the controversy, Dolezal was dismissed from her position as an instructor in Africana studies. Okay. All right. So I guess she fueled the debate on cultural appropriation and fraud, and she claims to be transracial. Okay. So
That's the issue.
that she claims to be transracial.
Yeah, because it's not, and not openly saying. So if you want to say, I'm this, but I identify as this, I'm not there to question what you want to identify as. That's your calling in life. But uh to to put yourself as that and represent me and um other cultural people, um like other black people, and be like, we've fought the same fight, we have the same struggles. No, you didn't. I mean, clearly she had her own, but it's not the same. She can't to have an identify with me. She can't.
Hmm.
I personally think she can't.
So one
She
issue
might
you're
want
bringing
to.
up is that somebody like I can't just be like, you guys identify as African American today. That's what I identify as. Like I'm the white show host here, and I'm just like, well, identify with it. And the reason I can't do that, there's a million reasons I can't do that, but one of them is that like I haven't walked through the struggle of having that racial identity. I mean, okay, that's one of many reasons we can't do this, but
You can see, the thing is, you can, to me, you can identify as what you want. What I found interesting today, when I knew that we was going to be talking about race and identity, and I wanted to ask Ricky if um like if someone said to you, you know, how do you identify? Would you identify with your bringing your race into the statement?
Mm, if it was asked in that context, I would. But if it wasn't asked in that context, I don't think I would. I don't
Yeah.
think I would. I don't think I would bring it forward. You know, something about this conversation. It makes me think of it. Well, I'm not even going to say it's not the same because I don't know, but it seems similar to the discussion the last 7 or 8 years about pronouns.
About pronouns.
I think
Mhm.
it's totally parallel. But keep going.
Yeah, it feels like it. It feels like it, and it seems more acceptable to change your gender than it does to change your race. But
Well,
I get why people would want to do both. Totally get it.
well, yeah, okay. So like recently now, and we have all kinds of differently gendered people at the Moira Press School. Like we are celebrating of all genders, races, obviously. And though, like sometimes it's hard for me. Like I'll meet somebody who totally looks like the gender that they were born into, like full on beard, masculine presenting, and they're like, my pronouns are she, her. And I'm just
Yeah,
like, okay, okay, but you're totally acting like a toxic male and like I no, I don't know. Like, but they're acting
Yeah.
totally male. They have a full-on beard. They're presenting totally male, and then they're just a neo-modern gender transgressionist and they want to be called she, her. Like, is that okay? And is it similar to the Rachel Dolezal case?
I think um to what Ricky was just saying about that it seems acceptable. Originally, why I asked you that question is because I thought about it myself. And when we did the first show, I said, I identify as a black woman and laughed, but I was being serious. Like, which made me laugh today when I Googled the definition of race and the definition um of um identity. Because if if you if you're black, you can't really you are what you look like. You're forced to identify as that because you're treated a certain way. Better for me now in my generation, maybe not so much for our parents, for their, you know, ancestors. Like if my ancestors could have wanted to identify as a white woman, do you think they would have get treated like one? No,
mm-mm.
no. They'd have still got dragged on the ship,
Well, a lot of
chained, and
identity,
maybe chucked
well,
off.
and this comes up in the gender and astrology show is, and the host of that was a trans person, and they were saying that people always think that one way of looking at identity is it's just what do you identify as that, and there's this kind of neo-modern deconstructionist approach to say like whatever you identify as is what you are. And though there is a reading of people, like culturally, people read you as a certain thing, and that also should inform identity according to this host, right? Like if you say my pronouns are she, her, but all of society is reading you as male, that's different than if you are presenting as female, like you're a you're born male, but you've had surgery, you've done all these things to present as female, and then you identify as female. That's actually very different than the person who looks, according to this host, that is different, So I, how much of it is what we identify in our soul and then how we're read by society?
Yeah. So this is bringing up a interesting point is how do we view it from a depth psychology perspective? And because to me, depth psychology is pretty close to astrology, and and I think as time goes on, as we progress more and more into the Aquarian age, and more people start to study, learn, understand astrology, I think we're going to see identity shift to a more soul identity or an inner identity of how is this person showing up as a sun conjunct Uranus. because as you know someone and you understand their astrology, it shifts the lens that you view their identity through. And so if someone says that, yes, I identify as this gender, but everyone else identifies me as something completely different. And as an astrologer, we look at the chart and we saw Sun conjunct Uranus, we'd be like, that makes sense, right? That would be actually an identity.
Because that's what Rachel Dolezal has, right? She has a Sun-Uranus
Yeah.
conjunction.
But she
And
has
well,
Pluto North Node in the first as well, and Venus in the second house. It can't see the first. There's a lot going off with
in
her
Libra,
chart.
and then she has her Moon Neptune conjunction in Sag, which is
Yeah,
so
she's got
multicultural. It's like
identity issues all over.
idealizing multiculturalism. Like I feel like her chart is so her. Like of like this is
Yeah,
so.
that's what I'm saying. Even the Jupiter mutual
Exalted
reception
in the
with the moon.
10th.
Yeah, with the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got Jupiter. Oh, flash happened then. She she her parents adopted. Um, I think you might just see when you scroll down. I don't want to be incorrect, but her parents adopted three black children, and I don't know if that played a part, whether she got sidestepped or they was like I mean, I'll have to read up more about her upbringing, but whether she saw them as like privileged for some reason and then adopted that concept that she based it around the color of their skin. Um,
Well, and I get
because
from a
that,
cultural layer, she's growing up in this culture where there's a lot of African elements, right? She has these three brothers who are African and all this stuff. And then with her chart, like the chart layer, she's a Libra rising with the Pluto North Node. So she's fighting for equality. That's her chart, her
yeah,
like soul's mission. And then the moon Neptune, that Neptune and Sag is definitely like multicultural, idealizing like being whatever you want, the freedom to be whatever you want. Like I think our generation there with that Neptune Sag like really like made freedom around gender and identity and all this kind of things. And I feel like her moon and Sag kind of identifies with other cultures more than her own in some ways. So I can see where the Africana professor of equal rights is in there. That's that Libra with the Sag. I get it. And maybe the Sun Uranus conjunction makes her like all weird, like need a weird identity for herself. I don't know. Sorry if I
I
What
mean,
would you
she's got
say?
the
Well,
moon in its joy, and it's in mutual reception with Jupiter. There's something that I think there's something about her siblings, them adopted siblings, that she idealized them as being
because it's
privileged.
3 to 10. Okay, Ricky, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that, yeah, the siblings part is interesting, definitely. But what jumped out to me is culturally, right? If you look at our culture, who has more freedom, white women or black women?
Hmm. Depends on the chart. No, I'm just kidding. White women.
No, 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 no. I don't think so. I
Really?
don't think so. I don't think so.
Why?
Because there's certain things that black women can do that white women can't. And it's even, at least in America, it's in the history of slavery, is that in our country, black women were working way before white women.
I don't agree with you, but
Making and
I agree with what you said, but I don't think
had the opportunity to make their own money. Right? We can, if we say they're not, we're only looking through people, or we're looking through the world through the lens of white people's glasses. But if we take off race glasses and we look at who actually has the most freedom to move around, and whether that's cultural freedom or actual physical freedom. To me, when I look at this chart, there's certain things that black women can get away with doing and saying that white women can't.
Interesting.
I don't know. Like, I don't agree. And it's just like for you, okay, so you like if you was to get you could see, and you've said you've seen white males, challenge the police, and you thought, I wouldn't do that. It's just the same. And then you've got and then you've got the tones of skin. So like I said I identify as black, and that's how I see myself because in certain situations, I would just be described as that. People would say what they see. But among other black women, depending on how dark their skin is, I'm not going to have the same challenges as them. So you would say that the darker you are, the harder it can get. And the example I'll give is, and not just in Western society, you even see it when you go to Jamaica, in the banks, in the shops, the lighter skin you are, um, the more, I don't know whether it's appealing or intelligent. So then you come over to Western society, the lighter you are, which the lightest would be white, then I would come, and then a darker skin, and then we're behind men anyway in general. So you've got that layer, you've got the gender, and then you've got race being, like
Oh,
hard.
Ricky, why do you disagree with that?
Well, because I think it's what you said. It depends on the chart. When I look at her chart, I'm looking at and I right, this is what we do. I bring culture in when I'm
Mm.
sitting with someone. And if I'm looking at this chart and I'm talking to a white woman and I'm talking to a black woman, it's a much easier conversation with this chart to talk to a black woman about this chart.
Okay, I didn't. So all right, so you're just taking it on the. Why
Well,
would it be easier?
well, the idea came from looking at the chart and asking the question of, so when I see someone's behavior, like I have faith in the chart, and so I always ask, like, where is this coming from, right? Because
Okay.
what I see expressing outwards, in my point of view, is it's coming from inwards. It's a function of something in the chart attempting to express itself outwardly. And I'm
Oh, I
looking at this
agree
chart
with
and
that.
thinking, what would be the motivation for this? And I was like, more freedom of expression.
Interesting. I do have to say my daughter has she's a triple Sag chart and she has a Moon Jupiter Pluto conjunction. And when she was young, she resonated with the black girls more than the white girl. Like she's super saggy and the freedom of black culture, she loved it. Like she just loved to be all like scrappy and like run around and be all like wild and lively, kind of thing. So maybe there's something about the sign of Sagittarius itself that likes the freedom of the culture that African Americans provide. I mean, is that kind of what you're saying, Ricky?
Well, I'm not as yes, but not as specific. I'm speaking more to one of the things that jumps out in this chart is a
In
theme
this
of
chart.
freedom, 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 freedom,
Yeah, yeah.
freedom,
I
right?
See,
guess
what
to
what
extend.
jumps out at me is the Venus, is her chart ruler, as she's Venus ruled, and her chart ruler is in the second house of self-worth. It's it's innervision, so herself can't see herself, and it's squaring Mars from the 11th. So the um the Venus is in fall. She's striving for like recognition around her self-worth. And then you had Pluto North Node. I mean, it's in I mean Libra, so you're gonna get that kind of advocating or the justice and peace coming out, and she studied race. But for me, the biggest thing is her ascendant ruler in fall, inversion to the first square Mars.
Hmm.
That Venus,
Do you
and I've
guys
got
do you
I've
guys
got Venus
like
Mars.
Rachel? Do you like her?
I love her.
I,
I think she's great.
I'm gonna read up about her, and I was just saying to you, there's another lady, Ricky, as well. She's from Germany. Her name is Martina Big, but she's also known as Malika Kubwa. But she's had surgery and everything um
Can we see a
to
picture of her?
become
Do you have a picture of her?
me.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of her?
Yeah, I don't know if it's on my phone. I don't know if you'd be able to see
So you
it.
like you like Rachel, Ricky?
I mean, especially since I started looking at her chart, because to me, again, I mentioned briefly depth psychology, and I think we can look at where behavior comes from. And the way I think about it, a lot of behavior comes from a wound,
Well,
you
she's got
know?
it opposite Venus, opposite Chiron.
I like her too. I
I
like her
mean,
Yeah,
chart.
I like her
well,
too.
when I mean a wound, it's interesting. Like a Pluto, because to me, I think of Pluto as the wound. And yeah, Chiron is the wounded healer, but we had Pluto before, and Pluto goes back to the underworld and all that stuff. So, so I think of Pluto in the first. I think of someone's job, right? I think when I see some Pluto in the first, someone's job is to trigger people. And when I say trigger, I mean there are certain things that are buried underneath the level of consciousness. And when we meet Pluto in the first people, I think the Pluto in the first people, where they're supposed to activate those things in us that are buried and help them come to the surface. And I see someone with the sun conjunct Uranus, right? Part of the way they shine, again, it's in Scorpio. So it's more of that bringing things that are buried up into the surface that are kind of shocking, right? And
So she's
if you think of
unorthodox in it. She's going to
Well,
act
exactly, 100%. And if you think of all of the conversations and the things that people have had to wrestle with and deal with because she's made the choices she has, I think it's made the world a better place. And if more white people were this open to other cultures, if more Americans, let me rephrase that, if more Americans were more open to deeply explore other cultures the way that this woman is, I think a lot of the race issues that we are dealing with, they wouldn't exist. Right.
And you know what? I think the people have the issue with her though, Ricky, is because she hid it. So she just claimed to be something that she wasn't. So you
She's
can,
working through some things, though. That's what I'm saying about the wound in the chart. If you look at this
yeah,
chart, I look at a chart always with, this is my training, always with compassion. And my training is the first thing I look at when I look at a chart is the South Node. And I look at her South Node in Aries in the seventh house. So, right, she's conditioned by a deep memory of something that happened in partnership, right? And the ruler of the South Node, Mars, being squared by the Venus ruler of the first. So there's some stuff she's trying to work out around her appearance, about how she shows up. And to
yeah.
me, for someone who's courageously willing to work through their shit, I always applaud that. Always applaud it. And even if it doesn't look pretty and it makes us feel uncomfortable, she's working on something. And again, to me, I can always applaud that.
I think but we've got the we've got the privilege of knowing astrology though, and being able to look at a chart and understand, like you the interest of why people are, because that's what got me interested in astrology in the first place, seeing my own chart, why I am the way I am, why I act the way I act. So when we see other people's and we see them interested in things, but for people that don't, they're gonna have an issue because of of it wasn't so much as, like loving something and embracing the culture and wanting to be part of it. She just took it, claimed it, and took them struggles and claimed them things as her own. And that became disrespectful because it was dishonest.
Well, and
But this,
and so
Uh,
at the
I,
sorry.
I mean, I don't think that dishonest is disrespectful, right? I think in order to get, at least for me, being black in this country, in order to get along, I had to learn to be dishonest, right? Because sometimes the truth fucking sucks, right? And so I think sometimes we have to be dishonest, especially when we're trying to work through stuff, right? To me, the worst thing in her chart was to try to be a good little white girl. That'd have been the worst thing in the world for her. We can argue that maybe she went too far, but that's what Pluto in the first, Sun in Scorpio, conjunct Uranus is supposed to do.
yeah, well,
Well,
she's going to just
Astro
transform herself, be she with Pluto in first.
And with all that Sag and that Jupiter, that's what she's supposed to do. She's supposed to reach, like, push boundaries,
Well,
right?
it makes me
And
think of that. I had this pair of Astro twins. One was African American, one was white, and I've talked about them on the show. They were both really into Africanism. The black one was a rapper, and he would go to Africa rapping and all this stuff. And then the white guy was had African relics all over his house. And this chart was into Africanism. I would make the case, like we're saying, that Rachel Dolezal, her Moon Neptune conjunction is into multiculturalism. Like if we
Yeah,
look at this pictures of her with her hair in braids. Okay, so like, and over here with her hair in dreadlocks or what have you, like her moon and Sag conjunct Neptune idealizes this. I mean, call it appropriation, I don't know, but she loves the look of Africanism. She just The girl has an
She's
African spirit.
emotionally, her moon is there. She's emotionally identifying with what feels good to her, and it's got Jupiter all over it. In Sag is she just the cultural aspect is just taking over, and what seems crazy to other people doesn't feel crazy to her. And by rights,
Well, and
she's
in
got
the cultural layer, she grew up with three brothers who are African, so that she has this
it's
African is
yeah,
charm growing up in this layer, cultural layer with influence. Like I think is she appropriating? I think her chart's literally sucking up the things that it resonates with, which
she's
has
embracing.
kind of African look to her that
Yeah.
got her mistaken as being African, and she didn't really correct that.
When I
Yeah.
looked up
Well,
the definition, sorry, Ricky, go on.
no, it's okay. Please go ahead.
When I looked up the definition, because I thought I would if someone asked me to like really, I was like, do I even know the definition? So I looked up race, and that's just to be fair, there's just one race, the human race. Race is a social construct. It groups people who share backgrounds and culture together. And identity is a self-concept, an image, basically your own self-esteem. So what you identify as, which is why people can identify as whatever they want. I think because race is a social construct that has grouped people together, and black people do when you have the colours that construct is grouped together. It's hard for you to identify as anyone else. I mean, I could want to be a white woman all day long, but it's not who's going to see me as that. Do you know, like it's it's just it's not we wouldn't have that privilege at
Mm.
the end of the day, we wouldn't have that privilege to be able to do that. I
Well,
can
and
do it,
I mean,
but
there are elements of African American women straightening their hair, and of course, a lot of critics would say that that's the, you know, making everything white. It's like, forcing people to look white in order to be beautiful and things like that. But it's like it could be that they resonate with that hairdo. You know what I mean? But sorry, Ricky, what were you gonna say?
yeah, yeah,
Well, I mean, it's what I was saying earlier about I think as we progress, right, we're gonna be able to see people, appreciate people more deeply, and identity is gonna shift. It's not, especially all the races are gonna mix anyway. So we're gonna have to look a little bit more deeply to identify people. And so yeah, the thing I was gonna say is I imagine Rachel when she was 11. Okay? She's 11 years old and she's going to school and looking at her chart, she is sexual. She's sexual. When she looks around and all the little white girls are not allowed to be sexual, but she looks at the African American girls and they seem more allowed to be sexual in the way that they move, in the way that they talk, in the way that they act with boys.
why do you
You
think
know? And someone, because well, at least in America where I grew up, it was true. It's
okay,
true. And it has a history in slavery where the white women were to protect their chastity, and the way we could protect their chastity was we rape all the black women. So when I said freedom, I what I mean specifically is freedom, because the ultimate freedom for me is the freedom to be yourself, the freedom to express your chart. And I think, again, I take this chart and I put it in an African American female and I put it in a white female, and the African American female, typically, generally speaking, right, I'm talking generalities,
yeah, yeah.
has more freedom to express the energies in this chart than a white woman in America does.
Wow, that is profound.
Yeah, I will
Well,
have to think
I'm
about that.
speaking from experience, right?
I was
You
I
take
was thinking about that
you
Venus
take an
Mars
intelligent
because
you take a I'm saying like you take a chart like mine, okay, ninth house sun. So we don't think of it in the flip side. And to me, this is like a vulnerable moment for me, but I've wrestled with this my whole life. So I'm a Virgo rising, which means I have Pisces on the cusp of my seventh house. Okay, so the rulers of my seventh house are Jupiter in the ninth house, Neptune in the third house, in Sagittarius. So this idea of a need to have multicultural experiences in partnership.
Yeah, I was no, because I want to say
I'm
No,
something
working
about
with Sun
you.
in
and
the
You tend to
I've
10th.
date
dated
white
all
women, right? You tend to date white
I've
women.
dated all. I've dated all sorts. I've done it. Dated all. Yes, all my kids are with white women. I've dated all sorts of women, but for me, the pull in relationships has been towards experiences that are outside of my culture, right?
Yeah.
And that's an expression of the chart. And depending on where I lived, in most places, I got made fun of, beat up, got nasty looks, right? All of these things that were put on me as was really it was just me trying to express the potentials in my chart. So I think at the end of the day, until we can really see who someone is on the inside, ah, right, we can't really see the person clearly. And I think race, culture, these things are superficial layers that to serve the purpose because we don't have tools to see more deeply into someone. But I think at some point, as astrology grows, right, no one's going to care, right? They're going to care more. What's going on with your moon? What's going on with your sun? Because the reality is, race can't hurt me, right? But someone's Mars, someone's Saturn, someone's squares, they can.
Wow.
That goes back to, do you know, like when we were
And
saying,
especially when they're equipped.
when we were saying
I
about
was just
your,
gonna say, especially when
oh,
those. Sorry, I was just gonna say, especially when the chart is emboldened or empowered by race, right, or the opposite. And I think that's where we can look closely to see what configurations in a chart are helped and supported by ethnicity, by race, by gender, and which ones are have the kibosh put on them based on
Mhm.
those things. Because to
That's
me,
an interesting point.
that's where the work is. Yeah.
That's a really good point, Ricky.
do you think, back to the moon Mars, and I was saying, some people would read it like me knowing, relating as, a black female. I'm not a black male, but looking at your chart and seeing that, and you just saying you date white women, do you think, because if I think moon Mars, like I don't know your mom, but like it gives me, like warrior female vibes, warrior mom, the one who would run down the street taking off her earrings to fight your battles kind of thing. But if if that's the concept that you have of the nurturing black female, maybe for relating in sexual ways, that's why you're attracted to white women and not black, because you just see them as, like, I don't know, two different things. I mean, I was married. My husband ex was Jamaican. Uh, but my boyfriend now's white. I've never ever looked at a white guy in the whole time. I had no interest. I didn't. It weren't even. I didn't like black English guys. I liked the accent. Like I liked Jamaican black males. Um, and I'm married at 18. We were married for near 20 years. And then like that, I was attracted to white guys. Why? I have no idea.
Mm.
And can I put them against each other or pit them off as to negative? No, like they weren't not negative or positive. I don't know if it was just a time in my life, and
So could we say that Rachel Dolezal is attracted to Black culture and that's okay? Like just like
yeah,
you
yeah,
two are attracted to white culture currently,
yeah,
anyways, or whatever is that. I mean, but I mean, this is a little different. It'd be like if you said like I'm white because I date white women. I am also white. Like you wouldn't do that. So that's kind of the weirdness here is that she's becoming it. It seems like it's like identity dysmorphia or something like that, like to think you are a thing that you are culturally
yeah.
meshed in.
I think there is a
Well,
point to which, I mean, if your identity is if if your identity is like self-concept and image, and we then look to the first and its ruler and the condition, if we look at the chart then as the definition of it is identity is the self-construct and image and your self-esteem, her ruler just happens to be in the house of self-worth. But it's in a version and it's in scope, it's in full. So, you know, and then it's like not only has she got self-image issues, but there seems to be something that's borderlining on mental health. I know like I don't know because it's gone a bit too, it's not like appreciating the culture. You you're identifying, embracing it, taking it, and then selling it like a product. Like it seems a bit
Yeah, I'm
straight.
sure she gets a lot of labels for this. I'm sure she gets called all
Yeah.
kinds of
Yeah.
things.
But your
Uh,
identity, I think, is a product of your environment, which your environment really is it's your third house.
Well, in this show, we're making the case that it's a merging of your environment and your chart, I think is what we're making that
Yeah.
case. Sorry, Ricky,
well,
what were you gonna
Well,
say?
yeah,
but
I'm
Aaron,
saying
your
that.
environment is the third house. So look at a chart.
Well,
And Ricky said,
well,
Wait a minute.
well, well, sorta. I think everything is environment, make meaning like the way that we're using it in the show is I think our gender and our race are the environment or main parts of the environment that our charts are trying to express in and express through.
yeah,
Hmm.
It's an
Interesting.
it is an environment. And so uh, from my perspective, and I do think right, this is a first house issue, right? And but even the first house, it's right, it's our physical vehicle and our personality and in our bodies. And from a spiritual perspective, right, it's a tool. It's a tool. And if someone wants to say, I want to use this tool the way that I would like to use it again, this comes back to the gender questions, and for me with compassion I can appreciate right that they're complex issues and these kids born into it right are trying to work it out. They're trying to work it out. And to me, going back to the chart, I start, what is the expression of this chart? This woman has the sun conjunct Uranus, right? And so we have to say, what are other possible ways that this could express? Right? I don't think we can just say, don't do this, don't this, you shouldn't do this. We have to offer remediations, right? Is because these things are powerful things, and planets are so powerful, they are going to find a way to express in our lives, whether they express through us or they express in the things that attract us. And I think the chart, who we are, is the chart trying to grow in the environment that we're in. And again, part of that environment is our family, is our culture, but it's also our gender, right? Our genitalia. And it's also our skin color.
mm,
Well, so I want to go back to a point that Ricky made earlier that I really don't want us to miss. I agree with Ricky that this chart is an instigator. When we look at the teleological purpose for Rachel Dolezal, why did the creator make her as she is? That Pluto in the first house is instigating a discussion that's going to uncover stuff that might lead to equality in the future, right? Because it's in Libra. It's that Pluto North Node in Libra is going after equality. She's doing it in this transformative, weird fashion. And with that Sun Uranus, let's look at other Sun Uranus people. RuPaul is a Sun Uranus square. What does she do? She dresses in all kinds of garb and changes her identity all around. And like, so this Sun Uranus part of her is like my identity is shifting and I'm always changing and I've got these braids in and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm like, it's like there's a part of her that is her identity is a push just with that Sun Uranus, and then that Pluto and the first, Ricky's making that point that her teleological purpose is to instigate like these needle pushing conversations. Like she's not here to be a placid, passive essence. She's here to cause some trouble, and she's succeeding.
but I think that the thing is, it's not about, for me, it's not about her changing her identity. Do what you want. And Pluto, you're going to transform yourself. You're going to be forced to. Like, and the North Node, it's all about her, but it's the fact that it's the fact that she lied and said she was something she wasn't. So when someone identifies as something, they're telling you what they was, but what they are now. You know the facts. Accept it because I can identify as what I want. So if I want to identify as a man and I want to change myself, you either accept it or you don't. But I started off as a female, I'm going to do that. But if I sit here on an online dating thing, I've gone through the surgery, I've took all the hormones, I've got a mustache and beard, and Andrew, I send you some likes and a pokes, and I come on to arrange a date. You think I'm a man, but it turns out I'm not. Are you going to be happy with that? You didn't
I
know.
see what
You
Well,
you're
as an
didn't.
saying. Like it's
You
astrologer,
didn't know I
well,
was
to
a
me,
female. I'm a man
well,
now.
okay, but to me, if I'm, this is real. This is how I live, right? To me, if that happened, I'd laugh and I'd look at my chart and I say, what in my chart attracted this? To me, not the other person, right? Because it's interesting, right? Whoa, whoa.
That's so. That is the that's so
that's
the
very
astrologer.
enlightened,
I
Ricky.
do
That's
that
a
all the
very
time. I
enlightened
look and
approach.
think,
Watching it all like a big movie is the
yeah, and it's the best way. But again, we
But no,
have
you're right, Danielle. That is a theoretical thing because I actually know a lot of trans people who go dating, and there is a question of when to do the big reveal. Like because they do identify as the gender that they're presenting, so it's not a lie to say they are the gender. But then there's more to the history. It's so I feel like I see what you're saying
mm,
is there's this transparency factor slash it's
Mm.
fine, Rachel, if you identify as a African American woman right now, but you haven't always been one. And can
no,
you have a
But
history?
no.
my guess though, but my guess is if you had a list of Libra rising people who had the sun in Scorpio, right, and Venus in Scorpio, that all of them will have stories about lying about themselves. All of them,
Yeah,
every single one. They'll
there's
have
gonna be
massive
some
stories
self-worth and
because that's
identity
what
thing.
well, but that's what Libra Scorpio is trying to figure out, right? Because I gotta say, when I'm talking about Libra, I'll put it out there, right? In order to make a true connection with someone, it requires skillful white lies, right? But as you go deeper with the person and you get to know them more, then it requires skillful way of revealing the truth. But that's just the process because Libra wants to make a connection, and if we give people too much information about us up front, we ain't gonna make a connection, right? But it is about, okay, we have a connection, and then how can I like slowly feed you more and more of who I am, right? Can you handle this? Let me give it to you. Can you so if I'm counseling someone with this configuration, I'm not making lying wrong, right? I'm saying, okay, right, you got to get good at it, but you also have to recognize if you want to have a deeper connection with someone, right, you have to find skillful ways to start feeding them the truth about you, right, while making sure they can handle it.
No, it's so interesting. I have a question, not to change the subject, but this is similar. Okay, so like I'm a 2947 degree Libra, and I identify as a Scorpio.
I know I loved it when you said
Because my son, okay, I'm a Libra Scorpio class. I identify as a Scorpio because my sun is conjunct Mercury in Scorpio, which I'm a Gemini rising, so my chart ruler is Mercury in Scorpio. And obviously I live in the
identify as
culture
black.
of Scorpio vibes. I'm wearing black
Yeah,
lipstick. I identify with the
you
Scorpio
love it.
look and whatever. So am I lying when I tell people I'm a Scorpio to make it easier? I'm just like, I'm a Scorpio.
Exactly. Now this is what I'm saying, right? This is exactly what I'm saying. You're not lying. Because
No, you
even if we say you are a Libra, right? That's based on rules, right? Rules that we've accepted as true. But like you said, you can easily make an astrological argument that Scorpio is more powerful than Libra in your chart. And right, anyone that knows astrology, right, it's a debate, but they're not going to be able to prove you wrong.
Right. Well, and there's the mathematicalists who are every time I say I'm a Scorpio, they're like, you're a Libra, you're a Libra over and over. And I'm like, you're not listening to my case. I'm way more, my chart ruler is Mercury and Scorpio. Mercury's conjunct my sun in Scorpio, blah, 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 blah. I have 3 planets in Scorpio, blah, blah, blah. But I think with Rachel Dolezal, it's a similar thing, right? Where she feels more African. She identifies with African clothes, hair, makeup, and people. She loves African ideas and theories and scholarship, and she looks kind of African. So she's like, I identify as African. Like, so I feel like it's a similar case in identity politics. It's political, right? Like, it's not called an identity apolitical. That's not what it's called. It's identity politics. Like, this shit is political.
can I ask you something? Have you ever heard of Jane Elliott? She's an anti-racism educator.
No.
No, you should Google her. She's a professor. She does several seminars and she's done several tests as well. But she was lecturing and she said to all the students, um, if you would change race right now and become whatever you are, black, female, male or female, if you would become black right now, stand up. No one gets up. And she says, no, you didn't, if you would change your color right now, stand up. And no one stood up. And she said, that is proof that you know there's a difference and you don't want it for yourself because you know the difference. And that's a fact. And I think that is the problem that people have with Rachel because it's just that. And I know you said you don't think disrespect comes into it, but I think it does because when you identify with something like race, not, like to be a Scorpio when you're elite, but something as sensitive as someone's color that's goes back, that's impacted their ancestors or generation, or even, for me, like I can remember being young and at the bus stop and having the N word, or a kid asking their mom, why is her skin dirty? As a kid, that's not nice to hear. But I experienced that. How can you identify with that? You can't. You've never had that. You've never been stood at a bus stop waiting for a bus and had a little child look at you and go, why is she dirty? And I'm not.
You're
Because
saying Rachel doesn't get the privilege to call herself black because she's never experienced the
she can if she
struggles of
wants
it.
to, she can if she wants to, but say why identifying as black. You can say you're a fish for me if you want to, but you can't breathe underwater.
Yeah, you can't do all the this
You
the
can't,
See, but I feel like if we were talking about gender, that people would those start throwing tomatoes at us. At least in America, we wouldn't, especially in Portland, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation and say the same thing about people's gender. But when it comes to race, then it's different. And to me, that's fascinating. It's
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, on the Gender and Astrology show, we got the host went really political with a lot of things and was saying that they support the binary, and they were saying a lot of political things. We got pretty political in that show, and I think but I you're right that these are very sensitive topics, and I think we're brave for even traversing them. You know what I mean?
Or dumb, but yeah.
No, I love it. I love it because the thing is, even when we was last week when we was talking about the third and the ninth house, and some of it is, talking about things we've learned, we've studied, we know, they've turned out true. But for me, other things was just ideas, things I think about, you know, and I think when you're talking about things like this, putting it with, the chart and looking at what makes an individual so interesting and how their lives played out, especially when it comes to this, race, or gender. I love it.
Groundbreaking. I mean, Ricky, the students at our school are starting to talk about race and astrology like it's like they're woven interchangeably. Like the flexibility with which students are starting to talk about this is really changing. I mean, I think,
Well,
I just want to commend all the work you've done with this because, it's a lot of work you've put in, like showing up every hour. I think we're on like episode 30 or something, like 30 weeks in a row. You've been like giving of your time. But I do think it is literally changing astrologers because we're getting really flexible with it, right? Like we're just like race culture or chart culture. Like for us, we don't have to like work that hard to flex this muscle like when we first started the show. And I think, I really think we're going to make a big wave if we keep at it.
yeah, I do too.
I
Yeah.
think so. I think you're going to spark other people as well to be a bit more courageous and, you know, come outside of like the techniques and just have a conversation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
looking at charts and, just wondering why. And
I'm curious with that, professor. So it was if people who want to change from, you know, white to black, they didn't stand up. But what about the other
yeah,
way? Like, would you change from black to white? And was the numbers the same, or is it?
well, I don't know. I mean, she didn't ask that question, so I don't know. But no one stood up, and that was her thing. Is she does tests as well, like with children. She did a class where she does blue eye, brown eyes as well, and separates to show basically what she's trying to show is if you put a construct on a group of people, you name it and you treat them a certain way, they're going to start believing it and acting that way. And if you give power to someone else, and that's what she's saying has happened with race, whereas this construct, whereas race, there's only one, the human race, that's it.
Hmm.
But with this construct of race being grouped with people has had people be treated differently. And she says, I mean, she's a white. I'm not sure how old she is or if she's lecturing now, but she's openly says, if I was black, I wouldn't be here. They'd have murdered me for the things that I say. So she
Hmm.
lined up dolls from white to like going in colours to black, and she got there was some children to walk in all under 5, and she said from which one's the most intelligent to which one was the least intelligent, which one was the naughtiest, which one was the baddest. Every single positive question, they chose the white one. Every negative, they chose the black one. And they're 4, so they don't they
Damn it! Now I'm
under
depressed,
5.
Ricky. Now I'm depressed.
Why?
Why?
Because it's such a that like why are things that way?
Well, again, I think to me, and this is just from being black, like so I took a class and we talked about cultural value, right? And that there's value in every experience. And so you think of the value in not being understood, right? Not being expected to act a certain way. There's a certain kind of freedom in that. And I think there's a certain kind of limitation in being the majority. And I think we just have to take whatever our limitations are and make the most of it. And I think what this woman, Jane Elliott, and there's you can probably find on YouTube or somewhere. There's an old Oprah episode where Jane Elliott was on, and she goes through. My wife was watching this a couple years ago, and she goes through a simple version of the test. It's
Yeah,
condensed and it's easy to get the point. And
yeah.
Oprah's great. But
I think she does I think it's the
I
eye.
think yeah, but it's what we were talking about a couple of months ago. Otherism, is that in all of us, right? We're taught that we're supposed to be good and we're not supposed to be bad. And so even in our own consciousness, we create part of us that's good and we create part of us that we don't want to think about, we don't want to talk about as bad. And because it's created on the inside, we have to project it and create it on the outside. And so people that are different or other become an easy place to put those parts of us that we don't want to deal with. Because the nature of the planets, the chart is going to manifest. And I think when we push off those other parts to other people, then those parts act against us and we don't get to own them or express them ourselves. And I think full circle, right? I think a chart like Rachel Dolezal's, who a woman tries to play the good white girl, right? It's a situation where she attracts abuse because some darker, deeper energies need to express through her. And I think she realized that it's easier to express these things if I'm identified as not being white, blonde, blue-eyed.
Yeah, for some reason
Yeah.
that to identify as white felt constricted to her. And I don't, which is weird because by rights, I would think, you've got your freedom on a plate.
Yeah,
But,
she's got, we have to wrap up, but she has like an African-y chart, and I really think this is a
yeah,
cool episode. So, but Ricky, I do want to say that it is ultimately very healing for me to be around your positive mental attitude. I love that you do not have an oppression framework in your chart. Like there's something about your chart that rises above any oppression, and I can see why you are where you are in life. Like I just think I think your chart kicks body's ass, so that's cool. All right, you guys, thank you so much for today.
Sun
I
Jupiter.
know she don't love me. I'm glad you just got all the love there.
Oh, come
And
on,
she
I love
goes,
you
no,
too,
no,
Danielle
keep
DRD.
it, no, keep
I
it
love you
now.
too, but I've been working with,
Ricky
I just,
don't laugh. Did you, Ricky? Before I said that, Ricky laughed to himself, because he. I,
I'm just saying, Ricky always has a
We've been
passive
going
aggressive
steady.
attitude. I'd be like, is astrology racist? He's like,
It's all
racism
right. I'm
doesn't
used to
exist.
rejection.
I'm like, he's just always working me out of the racism talk, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry I have to
Okay.
hang up on us, but I do.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.